Everybody, and welcome to, this is the fourth week of class. That means we're almost halfway done, believe it or not. Like I said, this class moves incredibly fast. So, if you're still on board and you're still moving along, great. I'm going to just keep encouraging you and hope you do fantastic here, because your first test, the unit test, is due tomorrow, or I'm making this video on Sunday, so is due on Monday night at 11:59. Okay, that's test number 2. You'll find it in the class shell. And remember, once you start it, you have to finish it in the time allotment that you have. You can't kind of put it on pause and try to come back and things like that. I mean, it just keeps going. So it's a time test, and you have to make sure you get through it all. Second issue there is to make sure that you have already signed up for Honor Lock, which you did if you took test number 1 back in the first week of class. And if you haven't, you have to take test number 1 before you can even attempt test number 2. By and large, that's to make sure that you signed up for the proctoring service called Honor Lock. And make sure you do that. Make sure you chose the option for the term, not just per test. Okay, so get that squared away before you even think about taking the test, because you simply won't be able to. You'll be blocked from doing it. Okay, so that's tomorrow, and I wish you the very best of luck with that. I gave you a couple announcements last week, sort of kind of give you an idea of what to expect. I think you'll, if you've been doing well on the homework and you have understood the concepts as you've been reading them throughout the chapters, I think you'll do fine. So, I wish you the best of luck with it. All right, now, this week we move on to chapters 10 and 11, and let's take a quick review of that. I'll get our book open. Now you recall in chapter 9, which you are completing probably while I'm doing this, or if maybe you've already done it. We talk about present value concepts. Those are very important core financial concepts that you're going to basically need between now and the end of the class. Hopefully that stuff made sense to you, because you move on to chapter 10. We're going to look at the relationship between, I like this chart, by the way. This is in chapter 10. It shows the relationship between all the different things we're learning, because they're going to sound a little disjointed when you're working on it, but they're not. They give the premise behind all the work that you're doing kind of comes and ties together by the time we get through chapter 12. So, in chapter 10, we're looking at the concept of valuation, also the concept of what are the required rates of return by investors. Those things put together, start to give us kind of the underpinnings to be able to understand what the cost of financing is to the term, which is chapter 11. So these things are very much interrelated. So let's look at chapter 10, because it covers a little bit of ground here. So in chapter 10, we want to be able to walk away knowing that the valuation of financial assets is based on the present value of future cash flows. That's going to become a very familiar way of looking at things. You want to recognize that the required rate of return in valuing an asset is based on the risk involved. And there's lots of sources of risk, but it can give you a pretty good idea of how you would actually incorporate that in. You want to be able to recall that the bond valuation is based on the process of determining the present value of interest payments plus the present value of the principal payment at maturity. It's to look at how we value bonds, but we also use some of the base concepts in there and some of the other things that we look at going forward. So understand how to do those things. Once you get those concepts down, some of the things we work on in the future will become more clear. You want to explain the basis of preferred stock valuation and a rough idea of how stock valuation is determined. There's a lot more that goes into it than what we're presenting, but this is just to help us understand it as a cost of financing to the firm. So let's take a look at chapter 11. In chapter 11, we're taking a close look at the cost of capital. This is an important chapter in that we're going to use this cost of capital in some of the future analysis that we're going to do. So, by the end of the chapter, you want to be able to recall that the cost of capital represents the weighted average cost of the source of financing to the firm. Kind of a balanced look, if you will, at what that cost is. You want to understand that the cost of capital is normally the discount rate to use in analyzing an investment. Again, that's a concept that's going to be used several times between now and the end of class. Recognize that the cost of capital is based on the valuation techniques from the previous chapter, which we were talking about bonds and preferred stock and common stock, that kind of thing. So, whatever those things that, like I said, that we learned in chapter 10, we're going to use here in chapter 11. Explain how a firm attempts to find the minimum cost of capital through varying the mix of its sources of financing. That's one of the key jobs of financial management is to find that right mix of financing. And each, as you'll appreciate, as we look at this as we go along, each move you make could affect the cost of other sources of financing. So there's, I'm going to say a ripple effect. That's not the right way to put it, but there is a broader effect than just on determining the cost of financing of a particular instrument. So, and then the final thing you want to do is be able to recall that the cost of capital may eventually increase as larger amounts of financing are utilized. More or less what I just said. So, it's a great chapter. You learn a lot about what we're going to need to do more of the evaluative and the analytical types of things that we're going to look at going forward. Okay, so best of luck this week. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I wish you the best of luck on the test. One of the things I like to say to students is, if things don't go on the first test the way you wish they would, the good news is, as I've pointed out before, there is an extra credit, literally extra credit. It's not a makeup test or anything like that. It's just something that's extra credit points on the final test of the class. You don't have to take it if you have a grade that you're satisfied with. Of course, you'll be fine. You say, like, all right, fine, I'll start summer break early. But if you feel like you want to get those points that to help bolster up to the grade that you want to get, feel free to consider. That's an optional test, and I would strongly suggest that you do it. Best thing about first tests is they can only happen once, and I understand that when you take a first test, you say to yourself, I don't know what to expect exactly, and sometimes that can be confounding. Good news is, I can assure you this, the first test is similar to the last two that you could potentially take. And so you know what to expect. You'll know what to expect better. But again, I wish you the very best of luck with it, and certainly reach out if you have any questions.